"If you can sing a whole song without challenging, I give you my gold clock," shouted Marcus Wellington between laughs, shaking the wrist where a Rolex shone that cost more than most people won in 2 years. The main hall of the Beverly Hills Resort Hotel exploded in laughs. Entrepreneurs in tailored suits and jewelry, covered socialities observed the scene as if it were a private spectacle. At the center of all that cruelty disguised as fun, a 16-year-old Filipino boy remained motionless, holding a borrowed guitar. Diego Fernandez had arrived there by chance. Son of immigrants who worked in the hotel kitchen, he had taken a break from his studies to practice music in the garden when he was discovered by Marcus. The millionaire, bored during a charity event, decided that he needed entertainment at the expense of the dignity of others. Diego's life has always been a silent struggle. His parents, Rosa and Miguel, worked double shifts at the hotel since they arrived from the Philippines 8 years ago. While Rosa wiped rooms and Miguel worked in the kitchen, Diego studied at a public school and dreamed of something bigger. He never imagined that a moment of vulnerability would become the most important test of his young life. "Come on, boy. Everyone is waiting for his private show," continued Marcus, doing theatrical gestures for the audience. "Or is it not even able to do it right? I bet even English, you say." The laughs got higher, higher. Someone shouted from the bottom, "These immigrants only know how to work with their hands, they have no culture." Another added, "Send him back to his country playing fifth category." Diego's heart accelerated, but not fear. It was something different, a mixture of contained anger and determination that had been growing inside it for years. Each prejudiced comment, every disdain look, every time someone treated him as inferior, had planted a seed of resistance that was now starting to sprout. "What song would you like to hear?" Diego asked, his voice surprisingly calm, contrasting with the noise of the crowd thirsty for the humiliation of others. Marcus smiled like a predator who has just cornered his prey. "How about Frank Sinatra's My Way? A classic American I bet you've never heard in life. It's for people with culture, you know?" What Marcus didn't know was that Diego carried a secret that would turn that attempt to humiliate into something completely unexpected. In the early hours, when the hotel slept and his parents ended the strenuous shift, he climbed to the terrace to practice. Not just guitar, but sing too. His voice, discovered by chance at age 12 when he sang to calm his smaller sister, had been secretly trained by a retired conductor who lived in the poor neighborhood where they lived. Professor Martinez, former musical director of the Los Angeles Orchestra, had recognized something special in the boy's voice during a school performance. Since then, it has offered free classes in exchange for small housework. Diego never told his parents, who were already carrying enough weight on his shoulders. "Are you sure of this song?" Diego asked, adjusting the borrowed guitar. Frank Sinatra is not exactly easy. The question took Marcus off guard. There was something in the boy's posture that didn't match the easy victim image he had painted on his head. For a brief moment, Marcus hesitated. Diego's eyes carried a strange serenity, as if they kept years of preparation for exactly that moment. "Of course I'm sure, boy. My Rolex against—" "Well, you have nothing to bet on," Marcus said, trying to regain confidence in the face of the expectant looks of the audience. Diego smiled for the first time since he was dragged to the center of that circus of cruelty. It was a smile that kept years of hidden training, nights of sacrifice, and the weight of a talent that was about to silence an entire room of prejudice. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering Professor Martinez's words. "Music does not know surname, nationality, or bank account. It only recognizes the soul that sings it with truth. So let's start," Diego muttered, positioning his fingers on the guitar strings with precision that made some of the musicians frowning their eyebrows. If you are enjoying this story of overcoming injustice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what this boy was about to do would change not only his own life, but everyone's perspective on what someone means. The first chord echoed through the hall, and at that moment, Marcus Wellington had no idea that he had just dug his own humiliation in the face of an audience that in a few minutes would be questioning, not the boy's talent, but his own humanity. Diego's first chord accompanied as a lounge as a promising whisper, but Marcus Wellington was not willing to let things happen naturally. With a theatrical gesture, he interrupted even before the first vocal note came out. "Wait there, boy. Where do you think you are, in the corner karaoke?" Marcus laughed loudly, causing a new wave of laughter from the audience. "If you are going to sing for real people, you need to do it right. No toy guitar." With a snap of fingers, Marcus ordered them to bring a professional microphone. "Now yes, sing without your musical crutch. Only you, your voice, and an audience that knows how to recognize real talent." The sarcasm in the voice was sharp like a blade. Diego felt the weight of dozens of predator looks, some recorded discreetly, anticipating what would certainly be a viral video of humiliation. Others drank expensive champagne as if they were watching a circus show, waiting for the moment when the improvised artist would stumble on his own pretense. "You know my way, right?" he asked a woman in a red dress, pretending maternal concern. "Because it would be a shame for you to be ashamed in front of so many important people." What they didn't know was that Diego had spent the last 4 years not only practicing music, but also facing situations like that. At school, colleagues mocked their Filipino accent when speaking English. In the middle, time work at a restaurant, customers treated him as invisible, talking about him as if he wasn't there. Each humiliation had built a layer of resistance that now protected it as an armor. "No problem," Diego said, returning the guitar on loan to a hotel employee. "I prefer it anyway." Marcus frowned. There was something in the tranquility of the boy who bothered him. It was like Diego not only wasn't afraid, but he was waiting for that. "Great, so now it's time for the show," Marcus announced, climbing the tone of voice to make sure everyone paid attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Filipino boy will give us Sinatra." The cruelty disguised as humor spread through the room. Someone shouted, "I bet you don't even know how to pronounce the words right." Another added, "5 seconds before you disregard." Diego took a deep breath and closed his eyes. At that moment, his mind traveled to the dawn on the hotel's terrace, where he sang to the stars while his parents slept after exhausting shifts. He remembered his mother's silent tears when she thought no one was seeing, the pride hidden in her father's eyes when he listened to him to have melodies while washing dishes. Professor Martinez always said, "Music is born of pain, transformed into beauty. The greater the injustice, the more powerful the art can be." "We are waiting," pressed Marcus, consulting his Rolex as if time was more valuable than human dignity. Diego opened his eyes and held the microphone. "Your posture has changed subtly. The shoulders lined up, the chin rose, and for a moment he didn't look like a scared boy, but someone who was exactly where he should be." "Before you start," Diego said with a calm that made the hall silence momentarily, "I want everyone to know that this song means something special for me. It's about doing things your way no matter what others think." Marcus rolled his eyes. "Cheap philosophy. Sing soon and end it." But some of the gifts noticed something different in Diego's voice when he spoke. It was not the broken English they expected. It was clear precisely, with a pronunciation that rivaled that of any native. Fernanda, a young journalist who covered the event, frowned. Something didn't beat the image that Marcus had painted the boy. Diego positioned the microphone, and for a moment that seemed eternal, the silence was absolute. So, without haste, without fear, he opened his mouth and let out the first note of "My Way." What happened next made Marcus Wellington realize that perhaps he had deeply underestimated the Filipino boy, who was about to show that not all the arrogance of the world can silence a true talent. And that first note was just the beginning of a revelation that would change everything in that prejudiced elite room. The first note of "My Way" that came out of Diego's throat, Fernandez, wasn't just music. It was a silent statement that made the air of the Beverly Hills resort salon to vibrate in a way that no one expected. The deep and controlled voice cut the noise of the conversations and made until the waiters stopped serving champagne. Marcus Wellington felt something strange in his stomach. That was not what he had predicted when he decided to humiliate the Filipino boy. The voice that echoed through the hall had technique, had soul, had years of training that did not match the image of immigrant without culture that he had painted in Ciabetza. "My God," whispered Fernanda Martinez, the journalist who covered the event. "He really knows how to sing." But Marcus was not willing to let a boy stole his show. In the middle of the second stanza, he made a sudden gesture to cut the sound of the microphone. "Very beautiful, boy, but anyone can decorate a song. How about something more challenging?" Diego stopped singing, but showed no frustration. In fact, he smiled slightly as if he knew it would happen. "What do you have in mind? How about singing without the microphone? For the guys from the bottom, can you hear?" Marcus gestured theatrically. "And since you look so confident, how about a song you don't know?" What Marcus didn't know was that provocation was walking exactly where Diego wanted. In the last 4 years, in addition to secret classes with Professor Martinez, he had participated in underground music competitions in Los Angeles, places where young talents of all nationalities were to prove their value without prejudice or social barriers. "No problem," Diego replied, returning the microphone. "What song?" Marcus cheered his cell phone and smiled wickedly. "How about Nessun Dorma, the Puccini aria?" He purposely chose one of the most difficult pieces of classical music, something that required not only vocal technique, but years of opera study. A murmur toured the audience. Some guests looked at each other worried. Fernanda frowned. It had gone cruel to deliberate sabotage. Nessun Dorma was a piece that even professional singers feared. "Marcus, this is ridiculous," muttered a nearby businessman. "Not everyone knows Italian opera." "Exactly," Marcus grinned. "If he is as talented as he wants to look, he should have no problem." Diego closed his eyes for a moment. His mind flew to a specific night 3 months ago when Professor Martinez had taught him exactly that aria. "This song," had said the old conductor, "separates amateurs from true artists. It's about triumphing when everyone thinks you'll fail." "Can I ask a question before starting?" Diego said, opening his eyes. "Of course," Marcus replied, already savoring the humiliation that would come. "Do you know the meaning of the letter?" Marcus hesitated. In fact, he did not know Italian beyond dishes names in expensive restaurants. "Yeah, about Vittoria, isn't it?" Diego nodded slowly. "It's about a prince who challenges the impossible and wins when no one believes in him." He paused, looking straight at Marcus. "It's about proving that you were right all the time, even when everyone thought you were dreaming too loud." Something in Diego's tone of voice made the hall silence completely. Even Marcus seemed less confident suddenly. "Interesting choice," Diego continued, considering the context. It was then that Fernanda began to connect the points. Diego's stance, his perfect pronunciation, the knowledge of classical music, all that began to form a very different picture than Marcus had presented. "Are you ready, or will you be philosophizing all night?" Marcus tried to recover control, but his voice sounded less safe. Diego positioned himself in the center of the salon, without microphone, without accompaniment, only his voice against the expectant silence of an audience that was now beginning to suspect that he was about to witness something extraordinary. He took a deep breath, and when he opened his mouth to the first note of Nessun Dorma, Fernanda realized something that made her heart accelerate. Diego was not just about to sing a difficult aria. From the brightness in his eyes and the trust in his posture, he was about to completely destroy all the expectations that Marcus had created on him. For a moment, when their vocal cords prepared to produce aria's first powerful grade, everyone thought they would witness just another predictable failure, another different person knowing their place. But those who watched carefully would note that their hands did not train with nervousness. They trembled from the contained power of those who were about to completely rewrite the narrative others wrote about their lives. The first note of Nessun Dorma that came out of Diego's throat, Fernandez, wasn't just music. It was a force of nature that made the whole hall of the Beverly Hills resort shake until the foundations. The powerful and controlled voice cut the air like a silent thunder that announced storm. Marcus Wellington felt his legs bamper. That was not possible. A 16-year-old Philippine could not be singing Puccini with the technical accuracy and emotional passion of a tenor formed in European conservatory. But there was happening, in the face of dozens of witnesses who recorded every impossible note. "Vinceo! Vincero!" Diego's voice exploded at the climax of aria with a power and made some women goosebumps to tears. The Italian word echoed through the hall as a statement of war. "I will win. I will win." Fernanda Martinez, the journalist, was recording everything with her hands shaking with pure emotion. In 15 years covering elite events, he had never witnessed anything as devastatingly beautiful as that musical revelation that was destroying all the prejudices of the room. "This is impossible," Marcus murmured, sweating cold. He is just a genius," completed a gray-haired man who approached. "Professor Martinez, Conservatory of Los Angeles. I've trained this boy for the past 4 years. Diego, show them what you have learned else." The revelation hit Marcus as a punch in the stomach. The boy he had tried to humiliate had been secretly trained by one of the most respected conductors on the West Coast. Each dawn on the hotel terrace, every silent sacrifice had built the moment that now completely destroyed its arrogance. Diego ended the aria, and the silence that followed was absolute. So like a break that breaks, the applause exploded. They were not educated palms of social events. They were standing ovations, tears in their eyes, people shouting angry, like in a real opera. "My God," whispered a socialite. "I never heard anything like that live." Marcus tried to recover control, but his voice was trembling. "Very beautiful, boy, but a bet is a bet. I said if you sang without disagreeing, not singing like a professional." It was then that Professor Martinez smiled. "Marcus, you still don't understand. Diego is not just my student. He won the national talent competition for 3 months. He has a full scholarship for Juilliard next year." Marcus's blood froze. Juilliard, the most prestigious music school in the United States. The boy he had tried to humiliate as immigrant without culture had enough talent to be among the best in the world. "Besides," the teacher continued, taking his cell phone out of his pocket, "I have everything recorded. His public promise, his prejudiced words, his attempt to sabotage a young talent just because he is different from you." Fernanda raised her hand. "I also recorded everything. My story will air tomorrow on the national channel. Millionaire humiliates young Philippine and finds that it has underestimated a future star of classical music." Marcus's face turned red in panic. "You can't publish it. My reputation, my business." "Your reputation?" Diego first spoke after the song, his voice still carrying echoes of the vocal power he had shown. "Do you worry about your reputation after trying to destroy mine in front of everyone?" The crowd, which minutes before laughing with Marcus, now looked at him with total contempt. Phones recorded every second of their growing humiliation. Millionaire's Hamed was already beginning to circulate on social networks in real time. "The clock," said Diego calmly, extending his hand. "A bet is a bet." Marcus looked at Rolex on his wrist, then to the dozens of cameras pointed at him. If it refused to honor the word, it would be publicly destroyed. If he surrendered, he would be admitting that he had lost to someone who had completely despised. With hands shaking with anger and humiliation, he took off his clock and put it in Diego's hand. The sound of the metal hitting the boy's palm echoed like a final verdict. "Diego," called Professor Martinez, "tell them about their family." Diego first smiled genuinely. "My parents have worked in the kitchen of this hotel for 8 years. They sacrificed everything to give me education and opportunities. They never embarrassed their honest work they do, and I never embarrassed who I am." The lesson was clear to everyone. Marcus Wellington, with all his richness and arrogance, had just been defeated by a young man who had built greatness about humility, talent on prejudice, and dignity on money. While Diego kept Rolex in his pocket, not as a trophy but as a symbol that justice is sometimes wrapped in times when no one expects, the entire hall knew that he had witnessed something that would change forever as they looked at different people. 5 years after that night at Beverly Hills Resort, Diego Fernandez was walking through the corridors of Juilliard School in New York. Now 21 years old and internationally recognized as one of the most promising voices of his generation. His first album, a revolutionary mixture of classic opera with Philippine influences, had sold more than 2 million copies and broken cultural barriers that seemed insurmountable. "Diego, Metropolitan Opera confirmed, you will be the main soloist in the opening season," announced his businesswoman Sarah Chen, handing him a contract that represented the dream of any young singer. Solo performance on the most prestigious stage of M of the Opera. At the same time, his parents Rosa and Miguel had realized a dream of their own. With the early profits of their son's success, they opened a small Filipino restaurant in Beverly Hills, ironically, just 3 blocks from the hotel where it all started. Nessun Dorma Filipino cuisine had become a meeting point for artists and celebrities who wanted to experience the authentic cuisine of the family who created the musical phenomenon. In the same period, Marcus Wellington faced a devastating reality. The video of his public humiliation had become viral with over 100 million global views. Millionaire's Hamed had become an international symbol of how prejudice can be devastatingly destroyed by the talent that tries to suppress. His investors had moved away, ashamed of the association with someone publicly exposed as systematic prejudiced. His luxury consulting firm had lost 95% of customers in 8 months. Family heritage, built throughout generations, has evaporated in legal proceedings and canceled contracts. "I never imagined that a stupid bet would not only destroy my life, but my family's legacy," Marcus confessed to his therapist during a modest office in the suburb. Very different from the elite clinics he frequented before. "Now I worked as a salesman in an electronics store, winning in a month what before spent one night." The Rolex Diego had won that night? He had been auctioned by Diego 6 months later to finance the Wellington Foundation, a deliberate irony that funded full musical scholarships for low-income young people. To date, 127 young talents had benefited from the program that transformed Marcus's arrogant symbol into a social justice tool. Fernanda Martinez, the journalist who documented everything, had won a Pulitzer Award for her series of reports, Silenced Voices: How Prejudice Stuffs Extraordinary Talents. The material became Netflix documentary that broke audience records and generated global debates on structural discrimination. Diego's story proved that talent does not know surname, nationality, or bank account, she wrote in her bestseller book. Most importantly, it has shown that trying to suppress greatness only reveals the mediocrity of those who try. Professor Martinez, now 74, watched with paternal pride in the meteoric success of his brightest former student. Diego always knew that music would be his sweetest revenge, he reflected during an interview for the documentary. Not cruel revenge, but the definitive proof that excellence overcomes prejudice, always. The conductor had become artistic director of Wellington Foundation, personally supervising each scholarship. Ironic that the money of arrogance now finances the talented humility. He smiled as he told the program's visitors. On the night of the historic debut at Metropolitan Opera, Diego dedicated his performance not only to his parents, but to all young people who face prejudice daily. Rosa and Miguel, now prosperous businessmen respected in the community, cried in the front row when he sang My Way as bis. the same song that had turned humiliation into triumph 5 years earlier. My parents taught me that dignity is not negotiated, and that honest work builds character, Diego told the public of 4,000 people completely crowded. Today, every note I sing is the result of their sacrifice and the lesson that our true strength comes from who we are inside, not how others see us on the outside. The applause lasted 23 minutes. Met Opera history record. Among the audience, dozens of personalities who once looked at people like Diego with disdain now applauded standing, recognizing that they had witnessed not only exceptional talent, but living proof that prejudice is always a losing bet. Marcus Wellington watched the television performance alone in his room apartment in Queens. For a painful moment, when Diego reached the highest grade of Nessun Dorma, he realized the devastating magnitude of what he had lost, not just money or status, but the opportunity to be part of something truly historical and transcendent. 3 months after the debut, Diego received a handwritten letter. It was from Marcus asking for sincere excuses and thanking the Wellington Foundation that he had given a second chance to his nephew, also adopted Filipino, who was now studying violin with full scholarship. Some lessons cost everything we have, Marcus wrote. You have taught me that true greatness builds bridges where others build walls. Thank you for turning my greatest shame into hope for others. Diego never responded to the letter, but doubled Foundatio's budget that year. His answer didn't need words. It was in the voices of hundreds of young people who now had opportunities that he hardly had. Diego's story teaches that the best revenge is not to destroy those who harm us, but to build something so beautiful and powerful that it makes any attempt to decrease irrelevant. Every note he sang was living proof that exceptional talents are born anywhere, and trying to suppress them only reveals the spiritual smallness of those who try. Today, Diego Fernandez is a global cultural ambassador of the Filipinas, honorary member of UNESCO for artistic diversity, and founder of an international movement that has already identified and supported more than 3,000 young talents in 40 countries. His voice continues to echo around the world, carrying the message that dignity, talent, and perseverance always win prejudice, no matter how powerful it may seem. And you? Have you ever faced situations where they tried to reduce their dreams because of their origin, appearance, or social condition? Leave in the comments how you reacted and subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that our true strength comes from within, regardless of any external opinion you try to define us. The best revenge is not to return the humiliation suffered. It is to achieve greatness that their oppressors could never imagine, and still use this greatness to open doors that they tried to close for others.